Matt Miguez has plenty on his mind, and he's ready to share it with the world. It's time to hear the Miguez Mindset.
Welcome into another edition of the Miguez Mindset here on ESPN Southwest Louisiana's YouTube channel. My name is Matt Miguez. Today we're going to be talking about the Louisiana Raging Cajuns as they come off of there's no other way to put it. They come off an embarrassing loss to Arkansas State this past Saturday, 37-17. They've lost Deion Chris for an extended period of time, very likely that he is gone for the year. So now, the football is in the hands of Chandler Fields. Can he lead this football team to at least one more win in their final 3 games to make them bowl eligible for the 6th straight year? But it's time to go behind enemy lines. I was joined earlier today by Pine Belt sports editor Andrew Abadie to talk about the Southern Miss Golden Eagles, their 2-7 season, and what makes them a dangerous opponent for the Cajuns tomorrow night inside Cajun Field. Andrew Abadie of Pine Belt Sports joins us here on the Miguez Mindset. Andrew, what's going on, my man? How are you?
Man, just getting through the Wednesday morning grind. Like I just told you off air, my paper is about to go to press. My sports section's done, so my week is a little bit easier now.
So looking at the Golden Eagles so far this season, you opened up with a win over Alcorn State, 40-14, and then it was kind of a downhill roller coaster after that. You lose to Florida State, you lose to Tulane, you drop a close one to Arkansas State. You get in a shootout of sorts with Texas State, drop a close one to ODU, get absolutely manhandled by South Alabama, and then a close game with App State that you had a lead in for a while, and then you picked up a big win over ULM, sitting at 2-7 now. Just kind of walk me through this 2023 season for Will Hall and the Eagles and kind of the ups and downs of it.
Well, I think frustrating would be the easiest word to use. It's not like they're a bad team getting blown out every week. Sure, they've had a couple of those with South Alabama and Florida State. But, they had the lead in Arkansas State. They were up 17-0 on Old Dominion. They had a 10-point lead with like 5 minutes to go against App, and they blew that one. I mean, they could easily have 5-6 wins. Then, they almost pull off the comeback against Texas State. It would have been their biggest comeback in school history. But, I mean, they were down, 50-7 or whatever it was, or 42-7 at the half. And it was 42-36 with about 5 minutes to go in the fourth quarter. So there's a lot of what ifs. And even the Tulane game, they were very much in the mix with that. I think it was like 10-3 for most of the game until Tulane pulled away in the second half. But yeah, it's frustrating. Hard to watch at times is a very good way to explain it on my end. But the last couple of weeks they have improved, believe it or not. Will Hall gave up his play calling duties. I don't think that was by choice, but since they've done that, it's worked out fairly well for them. It's led to a win. Should have been 2 wins probably. But on the opposite side, the defense, those guys were doomed from the start. I mean, they've had 5 ACL tears in the secondary. They thought they were going to be without one of their star linebackers because of a heart condition that ended up clearing up much sooner than it was. So it's just been never ending for them. They've had guys injured in and out of the defensive line. They've moved offensive players to play in the secondary. But, they did put together their best week last week. They forced 4 turnovers against what was a very bad ULM team, but it's something at this point.
Yeah, I mean, when you were 1-7 and losers of your last 7 games, you'll take just about any win that you can get your hands on. But, you brought up Will Hall relinquishing his play calling duties. And I've noticed that Southern Miss's offense has, developed nicely since he's done that. But, everything's got to run through Frank Gore Jr. I mean, he's just such a dynamic playmaker. What have you seen out of him so far this season? And do you agree with that statement that the offense has to run through him?
To a certain degree, he's their spark. I mean, he's their normally it's the quarterback who's the guy in the locker room. It's definitely Frank. It's been that for the past few years. But there is talented guys. There are talented guys around him. And, one of the main issues for this team has been the offensive line. It has gotten better since they shuffled some guys around, but it's not very good. And they've had to, I guess, work around it. I mean, that you could definitely tell this team got deflated at times. But my thing is, yes, when Frank Gore is running well and doing things, usually, I think typically when he eclipses 150 yards, total all-purpose yards, they typically win. However, I do think there are other variables that need to happen. You need their passing game to work. It hasn't done that a lot this year. I know people want to default to the quarterback, but it kind of goes back to this offensive line. I think caller, they say it's Jordy Joseph and Sam Gregg calling plays, but Sam Gregg is more so the OC on paper. Jordy Joseph is calling the plays for the most part. And I think Jordy Joseph, what he's doing differently compared to Will Hall. Jordy's playing to the strengths and weaknesses of his team, whereas Will Hall was trying to stick to his typical game plan. And Jordy Joseph found ways to make it work with an offensive line. They can't run downs. They can't run to the sidelines because the offensive line is slow. They struggle to block. Pass blocking is very hit and miss. Their quarterback, Billy Wiles, seems to run for his life, but they've found ways to make this run game work and come up with more timely play calling, I think has also been the difference. It also doesn't help that your defense has been giving up 30-something points a game this year.
So that kind of leads into my next question. You talked about the offensive line. You talked about the defense. What do you think the biggest weakness of this Golden Eagles team is, and how do you kind of disguise it, I guess you could say, for the final 3 games of the season?
Man, if I probably knew that answer, I'd be on the coaching staff. But I think, I think it's kind of what they've been doing on the offensive side of the ball is, trying to play to your strengths. You have a good running back room. They might be, I believe they're not certain yet, but Drake Clark, who is the number 2 running back behind Frank Gore, they might get him back. They thought he was out for the year. He, I think, broke his wrist or something happened to his wrist. But Kenyon Clay, who's been a guy that's been up and coming for years, has really stepped in, and he's a name people have kind of looked forward to seeing on the field, and he's very much looking very good. So I think playing to the strengths of your running backs, because they do have good running backs, like we've mentioned. But at the same time, I think something else that has kind of changed in the last 2 weeks is 2 of the guys that they've had to flip over that were wide receivers to be defensive backs, Antavius Willis and Zay Franks, have surprisingly started to play a lot better. And these are guys that were thrown in the fire. Zay Franks had a pick last week, and Tavius Willis is starting to break up plays. They're just freakishly athletically gifted guys, and they're smart. And they're talking about keeping Zay Franks there as a defensive back moving forward to, kind of. So I think the coaching is paying off. I know a lot of people at Southern Miss have blamed Dan O'Brien for a lot of their problems. And sure, he's had his faults, but it's his first year as a DC. They've had a lot to replace. But if they're at, say, 75% healthy, the defense can hang and keep them in games. But as of late, they're so banged up, they get down to the 4th quarter stretch and they can't hold on. They can't make the stop they need. And so somehow they got to control time of possession and give their defense the breaks they need.
Looking at this matchup tomorrow night here at Cajun Field, between the Cajuns and the Eagles, last season Southern Miss had their way with the Cajuns. I mean, that was one of the uglier games that I've seen in quite a long time in covering Louisiana. But this season could be a little different. But I think the big storyline in this one, Andrew, is Louisiana is on their 3rd starting quarterback. Ben Wooldridge is out for the season with an injury. Zion Chris is out indefinitely with an injury as well. So you're going to see Chandler Fields, a guy that hasn't started yet this season, but has a lot of experience in this offense. How do you see this matchup shaking out for Southern Miss? Where do you think Southern Miss has the advantage? Where do you think Louisiana has the advantage? Things like that.
Well, I'll give you a fun fact. I actually went to high school with Chandler Fields. He was a few years younger than me. I went to Holy Cross. He ended up transferring to Rummel. I say that with a little bit of a bitter taste in my mouth since he did go
Right.
on to win a couple of state championships at Rummel. But I know what he's capable of. I saw it in high school. I've seen it through the years. He's had his moments. I think actually any college would be more than happy to have Chandler Fields as their third string quarterback, given the amount of experience he has. I know he's had struggling moments this season, but I know the guy can be a gamer. That I do know
Right.
that much, just from my own personal experience. But I think because he has struggled, you have to try and take advantage of that and take away passing game from them. Because I do think Southern Miss can stop the run if they are at their best. But again, I think the best remedy for them is to try and keep their defense off the field as long as possible, control time of possession, and just leave the game in your offense's hands. And like I said, yes, Southern Miss offense has been bad at times, but they can put up points when they are rolling. They've caught a lot of bad breaks, but I think the other thing is, the defense did a great job of forcing turnovers last week. They did that against a ULM team that was struggling with their quarterback problems, and you'd like to think that, what's the best way to keep a defense off the field or an offense off the field? Force turnovers, right? Keep Southern Miss's offense on the field. That was a key for last week, and that's going to be critical for this week.
So, with this matchup, obviously the Cajuns have a lot of things that they do well. They have a lot of things that they struggle with as well. One thing they do very well is getting after the quarterback. At one point in the season, they led the country in sacks. You talked about the offensive line kind of being a weakness for Southern Miss. Is that the biggest issue you have going into this game? Is the offensive line trying to protect Billy Wiles?
It's been my biggest issue all season. um, but I will say they have played better as of late. And I think part of it is because they've figured out, at least Jordy Joseph seems to have figured out how to play to their strengths. Um, they're not as bad with pass protection, but Billy Wiles does have to run for his life quite a few times in a game. He will get his moments though, and Billy has been able to capitalize on that. But at the same time, the receivers went through this stint of dropping passes like crazy, leaving plays on the field. When these guys are in sync, they can put up points. It's whether or not they're in sync. I don't know how they determine how that works, but typically they if they can get to a fast start on offense, that means they're going to play well. So if they can only put up a field goal or something along those lines in the first quarter, it's going to probably be a long night for Southern Miss's offense. But if they come out, put up 10, 14 maybe, they're going to roll. That's kind of been the indication of this year.
All right, I'm gonna put you on the spot here. You're a sports analyst. I'm a sports analyst. We hate these questions. Who wins?
I don't make these picks, man. But I think if I was a betting man, I'd probably take the home team with the spread. How's that?
I'll take it. Andrew Abadie of Pine Belt Sports joining us here on the Miguez Mindset podcast. Louisiana Raging Cajuns, host of the Southern Miss Golden Eagles, tomorrow night, 6:30 kickoff on ESPNU. Andrew, really appreciate you taking the time, man. Enjoy the game tomorrow night, and we'll catch up soon.
Thank you again for having me on.
Really appreciate Andrew Abadie taking the time to talk about the Southern Miss Golden Eagles today. As always, you can find him at Pine Belt Sports or on social media at Andrew Abadie. That's going to do it for today's edition of the Miguez Mindset. We'll come back later this week to preview LSU Florida under the lights in Death Valley. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel, like, share it with all your friends at ESPN Southwest Louisiana, also on social media at ESPN_SWLA. Like I said earlier, we'll be back later this week to preview LSU in Florida right here on the Miguez Mindset.